Who is the best character in The Sopranos? Today I'll be ranking the 30 most important characters, in my opinion at least, from least favorite to most favorite. But that's enough yapping from me, here we go.
There's whale poo, and then there's you.
In dead last at number 30, I have Ralph. I hate Ralph. YouTube doesn't like me cursing at the beginning of videos, though, which sucks because I'd have some choice words to say about him. He's arrogant, a loser, an abuser, and a murderer. I know they're all murderers, but him killing the stripper with his bare hands is what cemented him to the bottom of this list. He was a character I hated so much that after he showed up for the first time, I literally looked up when he was going to die in the show. I was so excited to see him get what was coming to him. He got away with being the way he was because he was a high earner for Tony, but even Tony didn't like him. I actually thought he was going to kill him right there on the spot, outside the Bing when he killed the stripper, but he didn't. Ralph rubbed everyone the wrong way, and I don't know, I was surprised he lasted as long as he did. Ralph was easily my least favorite character in the show. At number 29, I have Richie Aprile. Richie was another character I was easily able to put this low. He was arrogant, mean, and unbelievably unlikable. Not only that, but he was also boring as heck. He never did anything of note in the show that really mattered. The one thing he did was hit Janice, which made him get ranked even lower, even though I don't like Janice very much. I don't like Janice, but I don't like any characters that hit women. I don't know. I will have people who do later on this list who are higher, but that's because there's more to their character than this one scene, if that makes sense. But with Richie, he's a jerk, hits Janice, then is killed by Janice. That's really all he does. He was always such a slimy piece of shit that always thought he deserved to be the boss even when not a single person supported it. I'm so glad Richie was killed by Janice seemingly out of nowhere because that's exactly what he deserved.
I wish the Lord would take me now.
At number 28, I have Livia. Livia was the first character that I just outright hated in the show. She was always so awful and hateful. She was racist and literally tried to get her own son whacked. She was the most realistically evil character in the show, which made her even worse. She was just a mean old woman who blamed everyone else in her life for her own misery and loneliness. One of the last straws I had when it came to her character was watching flashbacks. She was shown to literally talk Tony's dad into staying in the mob life. He had the chance to get out, and looking back, he would have made a lot of money. But she talked him into staying and not doing that. In another flashback, we see her hold a knife to Tony's neck. She was always an unstable, evil woman that deserved to be as lonely as she was by the time her character died. She was written out of the show because her actress unfortunately passed away. Which sucks, because her actress wasn't her. But I am curious to how bad she would have gotten if she was able to stick around.
Mister, you okay in there?
At number 27, I have Phil Leotardo. My hatred for Phil mainly stems from the fact that Tony's our protagonist, and Phil makes his life hell. He's so arrogant and gets so many people killed in a war that he not only started but also continued to sustain. He was so prideful and thought New York was the only mob family that mattered. I don't have a ton to say about Phil, but the guy fucking sucked, and he was always in the wrong whenever he was on the screen.
So what, no fucking ZD now? Hey!
At number 26, I have AJ. AJ was such a little punk. He was a spoiled brat that never cared about the consequences of what he did. He's not evil like the four characters before him, but he does suck as a character. I feel like the writers had nothing for him to do early in the show, so he never really had to go through any character development. Because of the last season, he was still pretty much the same character by the end. The only difference was that he tried to end his own life after he lost his Latina baddie girlfriend, which, fair enough. But he never got better throughout the show. He was the same loser character. The only arc that he had was becoming more violent and using his last name to make more money. AJ sucks so much more than Meadow, and I doubt anyone will agree with that. Or disagree, I guess. At number 25, I have Janice. You know, I really hated Janice when she showed up in The Sopranos near the beginning. From the second she showed up, she was just causing trouble, trying to take things she had no right to have, and just outright sucked. But the reason she's further down on this list is because, well, she eventually married Bobby, and she got much better. I was really worried at first. I thought she was going to take advantage of Bobby and the kids for how kind Bobby is. I really like Bobby, but thankfully she surprised me and got a lot better. I never really liked her character, which should be obvious by her placement, but at least she got better throughout the show rather than worse like AJ, who's right below her. So yeah, she sucked a lot, but she did eventually get slightly better. I've said that a lot, sorry.
Fucking mercy. Would you take a sledgehammer to my balls?
At number 24, I have Junior. Junior may have been the second person who I hated in the show after Livia. From the start, he thought he deserved to run the family when not a single person wanted him to. He was kind of like Richie in that way. He was also dumb long before his mind went, getting manipulated by Livia until she died. He even got convinced to try to whack Tony, which is crazy. Junior was always an asshole who felt like he deserved it all when he had never really done anything to make that true. I did feel sorry for him by the end when he was going through his health issues. I imagine the scariest thing in the world is your mind going. But he was a dick for years before he had that kind of cop-out. The fact that no one took out Junior throughout the series shows how unseriously everyone took him, honestly.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
You shouldn't have listened to me. It's your hand.
Yeah, I would have hit anyway.
Come here, I want to talk to you, man.
At number 23, I have Jackie Jr. Jackie was such an idiot. He was one of the few characters who could have stayed out of the mob life and still been successful and rich. Tony was trying to actively keep him out of life, but he just kept trying to get into it. Not only that, but he had the balls on him to actively cheat on Meadow while in front of Tony. That was crazy. Like, do you think he'll be okay with it? It doesn't help that Ralph is your stepdad and actively helping you start your own small little group. The second he was involved, I knew it would not end well. Then trying to rob the wrong people, he knew what was going to happen. And I'm glad Tony didn't try to save him at the end. Jackie truly could have had it all, but greed and his need for power was really his downfall.
Merry Christmas.
At number 22, I have Gloria Trillo. Gloria was the perfect example of don't date anyone that you met outside your therapist's reception area, especially if her therapist actively warns you not to date her. Not that anything that happened was completely her fault by any means. Women who date Tony don't usually end up doing very well in their life. Gloria, unfortunately, was the worst off of all of them. She was not very stable in general, and pairing that with Tony being a cheater and all-around monster a lot of the time, it worked out about exactly as well as you expected it to. Gloria is one of the three main gumas I'm going to talk about, and she was my least favorite of the three. Unfortunately, she ended up taking her own life. At number 21, I have Vito. I honestly didn't notice Vito as a character until they put him in the storyline based on him being gay. Once he was put into that storyline, he was okay as a character, I guess. I wish we'd been aware of him being gay from, like, the beginning. I think it would have been super interesting watching him try to keep that secret for multiple seasons. I think it would have been pretty cool. But as far as I can tell, there were no hints about it before he was caught in the truck. I feel like this was kind of a come-up-on-the-fly kind of idea, and that sucks because the idea of a gay man hiding his sexual identity while working for the mob would have been so interesting, and I wish they would have, like, foreshadowed it in any way. So Vito was an alright character, but he easily could have been a top 10 character if written correctly.
The fuck?
At number 20, I have Valentina. Valentina is the second of the gumas I'm going to talk about. Tony met her because she was dating Ralph. One of my favorite things she did in the entire show was make Ralph step in horseshit. I thought that was hilarious. She was always pulling little pranks. At first, Tony likes that because it makes him feel young again, but it eventually starts to wear on him and get on his nerves. She was okay, but never really got the time to be interesting during the show. She also didn't have a good time because of Tony. She was making him breakfast and accidentally set herself on fire. She got third-degree burns, and Tony just broke up with her. It was absolutely heartless, and he justified it by paying for medical bills. Just throwing money at the problem, and it was tough.
Hi.
Okay.
John?
At number 19, I have Johnny Sack. Johnny Sack played the game better than almost anyone in the entire show. He was always scheming and taking power and planning hits. He even made it out from being an underboss to becoming the Don and running the show. My biggest problem with Johnny was that Tony was our protagonist, so we had to naturally dislike the guy because he caused a bunch of problems for him. Johnny was always fighting for power against Tony, and he did a good job of it. One thing that I really respected about Johnny was his love for his wife, Jenny. He was one of the two mob guys that we know of that refused to take on a mistress, and I always thought that was commendable. He even almost had someone killed because of a joke made about Jenny's weight, which, good on him. but that's probably the thing I respected most about Johnny. At number 18, I have Charmaine. Charmaine was an okay character, and I don't have a ton to say about her. She was a bitch sometimes, but she was also actively trying to keep Arty from being tied to Tony and the mob. She really wanted what was best for him, and she knew that Tony really was a bad guy because they had their own history. Charmaine wasn't really in the show a ton, especially in the later seasons, but she never really did anything to make her place any lower on this list, nor higher.
Will I be as effective as a boss like my dad was? And I will be. Even more so.
At number 17, I have Little Carmine. Little Carmine seemed like he was going to be an issue throughout the series, but that didn't end up being true. When his father died, he came back to New York. That was a problem, because though his father wanted him to take the throne, our old pal Johnny Sack decided he wanted to fight a war in order to take that power for himself. A lot of people die during this, and I honestly don't blame Little Carmine for it. Eventually, he bows out and lets Johnny take the mantle of Don. This is when I start to like Little Carmine a lot more. He's a much better character as a mediator and side character. He was never really meant to be the big boss. He wasn't made for it. I like how his character ended up turning out, and I don't know, I really like Little Carmine by the end.
What are you, that Polish maid? I want to talk to Tony.
At number 16, I have Irina. Irina is the last of the three main gumas I wanted to talk about. We see her very early on as Tony's main mistress. She's fallen in love with Tony and wants him to leave his wife. She wants him all for herself, and I've never understood how Tony did it. Tony isn't thrilled with this idea. He decides that she's crazy and ends the relationship. She then threatens to end her own life, and she attempts to do so. She also is one of the main catalysts for Carmela leaving Tony. She tells Carmela that Tony was sleeping with her, and Carmela's furious. I like that she eventually finds a better relationship with Ronald. Once again, being a mistress for Tony Soprano only leads to suffering from what we've seen.
Thought I was out. They pulled me back in.
How's it going?
At number 15, I have Pussy. Pussy was a boring character who quickly got very interesting when we find out that he's been giving information to the FBI. He was not only Tony's best friend, but he was even good friends with Tony's dad. He was truly Tony's most trusted ally, and him betraying Tony affected Tony for the rest of the series. Tony was having nightmares about killing him, had a hard time trusting anyone afterwards, and never seemed to get close to any of his friends after that. Pussy's whacking, I think, is one of the most iconic scenes in the entire show. Seeing Paulie, Sal, and Tony just question him on the boat when he knew what was coming was just so good. Pussy may have only lasted about 2 seasons, but he definitely impacted the entire show.
Bill's a lucky man.
At number 14, I have Svetlana, the problematic queen. I love Svetlana. She was the only one who ever slept with Tony during the show, and it didn't cause any issues because of it. She also had to deal with Livia, Jr., and Janice at different points, and I can't imagine a worse hell. She isn't in the show a ton, and doesn't do a lot, so I can't really put her character any higher, but I think she's so unproblematic that she deserves a relatively good spot on this list.
Fuck that. This is how I say nothing.
At number 13, I have Paulie. Paulie is such an asshole, but he's also so damn funny. He's constantly getting in fights, trying to prove himself, and doing the dumbest shit at all times. He actively causes problems by trying to do the most macho thing and try to be important at all times. Paulie, at different times, is Tony's biggest hater and biggest supporter. For example, he tries to start a coup and overthrow Tony at one point. But he also has a painting of Tony as a general above his mantle. I think he truly loves Tony, and he just got an ego that was a little too big for a minute. The biggest beef I have with him was when he and Christopher had beef near the end of the show. He literally torments Christopher so much that he is driven back to drinking after being sober for years. And this unfortunately leads to Christopher's death. And being a big Christopher fan, I cannot forgive Paulie for that.
Never call me again.
At number 12, I have Meadow. Meadow is so much better than AJ, even if she's annoying at times. Especially in the earlier seasons, she's very self-righteous. She constantly told Tony she doesn't condone what he does, but she's happy to spend his money to go to college and even plan a trip to Europe. The difference between her and AJ is that she actually backs up her self-righteousness. She, while in college, works at a law firm to help represent people who can't afford lawyers. She truly wants to help people, and I definitely respect that. I really like her relationship with Tony and how much she's been like shaped by having a mob dad in general. Aside from that, she's a fine character. Complains a lot, but a good character nonetheless.
Way out of line, kid. Let's get some cold fucking fizzy water on your head.
At number 11, I have Hesh. Hesh is another one of those characters who we didn't see a ton during the show, but I really liked. He was friends with Tony's dad and then Tony himself. He always conducted his business with a lot of respect, and I always liked the way he, presented himself. He was a Jewish man that had to deal with a lot of shit from a bunch of Italian wise guys, and he never backed down. I thought that was very cool. He was good to Tony, and was kind of like a father figure for him. He'd often give him advice, and always be much more rational and mature than most of the people that Tony listens to. Hesh is a great character, and I only wish we got to see him more in the show.
Yeah, boy.
Tony, come on! Listen to somebody else for a change.
At number 10, I have Tony B. Tony was another guy who frustrated me. He had the ability to stay out of the family when he got out of prison, but he couldn't get into a normal work life and fell into the bad life. He was so smart and had such a huge potential. I think Steve Buscemi really killed the role, or Buscemi, that's actually how it's pronounced, fun fact. When he showed up in the show, I always thought it was great. I loved how he acted and the character he played. It was so entertaining. It was so tragic how things went down and how Tony Soprano was forced to kill him to keep the peace, which was even more rough knowing that they were like cousins and childhood friends. Tony B had it all and could have just, if he would have stayed away, he could have really done well for himself. He was so smart, but unfortunately he did not.
What the fuck do you know about it?
At number 9, I have Arty. Arty is another one of Tony's old friends. He makes great food, married way out of his league, and yaps a ton. Arty is mainly just a silly side character in the show. He owns a restaurant, and Tony and the rest of the guys take advantage of that. To Charmaine's despair, a lot of business gets done at their restaurant. I was actually surprised he ended up surviving the entire show, especially when he fucked up with a shady business deal and owed Tony a bunch of money at one point. Tony definitely had a soft spot for him, and it helped him survive more times than one. But I, overall, really liked Arty as a character.
Eat shit, Danielle. Whatever the fuck your name is.
At number 8, I have Adriana. Now we're going to start talking about characters that I really like, and I really like Adriana. I always respected her trying to make money for herself and help get Christopher out of the mob life. I thought that was very cool. She was always kind and positive and helpful. She got essentially tricked into being a mob informant, and it really screwed her over. Because she put her trust in Christopher, she died. She gambled that he loved her more than he loved the Soprano crime family, and she was wrong. All she ever wanted was a nice life with Christopher, and she never got to have that. And this might be the understatement of the millennium, but, she was way out of Christopher's league. But unfortunately, Adriana trying to save Christopher led to her being killed.
Pure high.
At number 7, I had Furio. I was so excited to meet Furio. When I was a kid, we had a little Italian statue that held stuff up in our kitchen, and I'll try to find a picture to put that up while I'm talking about this, but his name was Furio, and he was named after this character. Everything he did was so cool. He was from Italy, and was way more hardcore than any of the guys in Jersey. He will beat up anyone, man, woman, or child. I also love the small arc of him and Carmela falling in love. He appreciated her in a way Tony never had, and she could feel that too. It was so sad that my favorite couple throughout the entire show never technically got together. Furio is just the best, and it sucked that he just went away one episode and never came back. At number 6, I have Bobby. Bobby's another character that I just love. He went from being Junior's bitch to being a powerful man in the family. He also made Janice end up being a tolerable character, which is amazing. Also, like Johnny Sack, he was one of the very few people in the mob family that didn't cheat or have a guma, and like I said before, I respect that. He loved his first wife so much, he would never have betrayed her. He was also a good father, and even though his son was a jackass at times, he still did good. Bobby was always such a good character, and I loved whenever he was brought into a story. He also gets brownie points for kicking the shit out of Tony in the last season.
Thought I was out. They pulled me back in.
At number 5, I have Sylvio. I always really like Syl. Not only does he look like the most mob-like person I can imagine, but he was always such a solid character. He never caused any drama. He just came in, did his job super well, and then left. He also brought in a ton of money for Tony, which is one of the reasons why he was Tony's number 2. Whenever Tony needed something done right, he would send Syl. Just think about the Adriana situation. He sent Syl to take care of it because he couldn't afford for it to not be taken care of. For someone to mess it up, he could not afford that. There's not a lot to talk about with Syl. He was just chill and still one of my favorite characters in Sopranos.
Fuck you.
At number 4, I have Dr. Melfi. Dr. Melfi was definitely one of the most interesting characters in the show. First off, she's one of the few characters on this list that has no ties to any mob family outside of being Tony's therapist. This whole world is completely different than the one she's used to. She constantly has to fight her morals and decide if she wants to treat Tony. She wants to because it's her job and her duty, but she just can't. She's scared of him. She finds him so interesting, but she is terrified of how violent Tony is and how dangerous it is to be involved in his life. I also found it interesting how she had to decide if she would sick Tony on the man who sexually assaulted her. I found that very, very interesting. She knew that if she told him, the guy is taken care of. She would not have to worry about him ever again, and the peace of mind would be there. But she took her job very seriously and didn't condone the violence, didn't have Tony do it. I think Dr. Melfi is a great character who gave us a lot of insights on Tony as well.
The fuck was that for?
At number 3, I have Carmela. People often compare Breaking Bad to The Sopranos, so I want to compare Carmela to Skyler. I'm not even a Skyler hater by any means, but I think Carmela is so much better than she is. Rather than just being put into the world as the wife of the protagonist, Carmela is her own character and goes through her own arcs. Whether that's her leaving Tony, or her falling in love with Furio, or even her building and selling a house with their father. She is a three-dimensional character that is well thought out, and honestly very interesting. Like, imagine being the partner of a mafia boss. You know they're constantly cheating on you and killing, and you still stay with them. You know if you took a moral stance and left, your life would be significantly less lavish. The show really takes us through all of that and lets us feel how Carmela feels, and it's so dang interesting. So, though it may be a hot take, I think Carmela is the third best character in The Sopranos overall. At number 2, I have Christopher. Now for the character that I think is the most interesting character in the show. We see Christopher go from being a nobody in the family to getting groomed to take Tony's spot, to him just dying on the side of the road. Christopher had it all. He had Adriana, that loved him very much until he decided he loved the family more than her. Then he had a wife, child, and beautiful home. He was clean, sober, and even successfully producing movies. But he went and messed it up by drinking and driving. Throughout the show, we keep seeing Christopher mess up every chance he gets, but he keeps getting more chances. He truly fails upwards in the Soprano family. I think it was so interesting getting to see him come up in the family. We got to see all the different stages and levels of the family through him. Christopher was one who both wanted fame and success, but also wanted the power that came along with the mob. His story is more sad than most because you see the life he could have had if he had just left with Adriana when she gave him that chance.
I'm the motherfucking one who calls the shots.
At number 1, I have Tony himself. While Christopher is the most interesting character in the show, we all know Tony's the best. Part of that is the fact that he has the most screen time. That helps. He's got more screen time than anyone else in the show, so we see him more, we see what he's going through. Another part of it is his therapy sessions with Dr. Melfi. We get to see what makes him tick, and more importantly, we see that he's only human. He has anxiety and panic attacks too, no matter how many walls he puts up to hide it. Tony is a true villain who doesn't think he's a bad guy. He's so unself-aware that he's just indeed the villain of his world, and he never knew it. He kills, steals, fights, and so much more, and still claims to Dr. Melfi that he's not a bad guy. There's always someone worse in his mind. That's one of the most interesting parts about Tony to me. Tony to me is one of the most interesting protagonists for any show ever. I think a big reason why The Sopranos is still so popular today is because of how well Tony was written. I really love this show, and watching Tony switch back and forth morally at times is some of the best TV I've ever watched. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Comment below your own version of this list because I'm so curious what other people think of it. And subscribe to help me grow my channel. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and I'll see you next week. Bye.